I think it's a good time to be honest about what you really want because, the workforce is kind of up for grabs in a lot of ways. To me, the question of what's my purpose isn't as inspiring as where am I gifted? What are your natural skills? What can you up the volume on and bring to the table and contribute to the world? Don't do what you love, do what you are. And if you don't know who you are, or where your gifts are, that's the first order of business, not getting a new job or, figuring out what job to look for. It's who are you? Where are your skills? And then really exploring what's out there.
Hello, everyone. I'm Larry Weeks. Welcome to another episode of the Bounce Podcast. I think most of us have heard the phrase, the Great Resignation, in all the media of late, also known as the Big Quit, and probably more. It's a current economic trend in the U.S. in which employees are voluntarily leaving their jobs in huge numbers. This started around the end of 2020 and ramped in 2021, roughly a year after the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And a lot of this is not surprising because much of the service sector jobs were experiencing a lot of burnout because of the pandemic, not to mention some of the health risks of some of those jobs. But it bleeds beyond those sectors, and it's impacting many different industries, revealing a deep dissatisfaction with employment variables. This is also existential, where people are just reflecting on what's important in their lives. Many people have had health scares, or they've lost loved ones, or know people who have. They're working out of their homes 24/7. So there's a lot of time to think about life or rethink about life, and specifically work-life balance, long-term goals, so on and so forth. Hence, my guest today on the podcast. My guest is Ashley Stahl. Ashley is a former counterterrorism professional turned career coach and now best-selling author of the book U-Turn, Get Unstuck and Discover Your Direction, Design Your Dream Career. And Ashley's helped clients in over 30 countries discover their career path and land more job offers. Her writings appear in monthly career columns, Forbes magazine, and she's been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, and many more. And she has 2 viral TED Talks. I encourage you to check them out. I will link them in my show notes on the website. I think you can tell right away when you listen that Ashley is on a mission to help people step into a career they're aligned with and even excited about. And I wanted somebody like Ashley on who has their finger on the pulse of these type of career transitions or workplace phenomena to determine, number one, what is happening? What is she seeing that's happening when she talks to employees and employers for that matter? And more importantly, what are the opportunities that this time that we're all living in affords? If you're an employer, what should you be aware of? And as an employee, what should we maximize or what should we seize from a standpoint of opportunity? Ashley was very articulate, super fun to talk to. We talk about the Great Resignation, what's going on, some of the soft skills like mindset, the questions you should be asking yourself, what's important to you. We talk a lot about purpose and meaning and whether that's a luxury or not, and how much burden should you put on work to fulfill you. And we talk about the hard skills, like what if you are in a career transition or you want to change careers or you want to change jobs? She gives some great practical advice on the best way to do that and what you should look out for and when you should stay in a job or leave. She gives some good heuristics around that. So I think you'll enjoy this episode. So without further ado, here's Ashley. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you are a counterterrorism expert. Tell me your former life there. Or do you have to kill me?
Life. I mean, maybe a little tiny killing. No.
Did you change your name? Are you really Ashley?
I know. Am I really Ashley? Am I really a career coach? Who am I? No, I mean, being a millennial, I grew up during 9/11 and it really impacted me to have family on the East Coast. And I was, just like anyone in college, didn't really know what I wanted to study, went to career services and they, gave me all of the 3-word directives that got me more confused, like follow your passion and find your bliss and do what you love. Like, I don't even know what they said. But I remember leaving thinking I need to major in something and I don't know what it's going to be. I'm more confused than ever. And so not out of being an overachiever, but out of being confused. I just, in non-committal, I majored in French, history, and government. And I had this moment. I was living in France. I studied abroad, and I saw this man hit his wife across the face. I was studying Middle Eastern politics at the time. I was super fascinated by it. And I had a knack for languages. And I remember this man in this alleyway in France, he hit his wife across the face. He was screaming at her in this language I didn't know. And I remember in that moment thinking, like, I want to protect in some way. And what better way when you grow up in the wake of 9/11 than to protect in the Department of Defense, the highest level of protection I could think of. So I also had a little brother growing up, and he's very sharp and doing great in his career. But when we were younger, he was a slower learner, and I was so protective of him in school. And so I think there's just this mama bear that I misunderstood in myself and channeled into a national security career without realizing so many other parts of me, like what are my core values? What are my skills? And is this really compatible with the path that I really am meant for? So, I ended up learning how to land job offers after one too many months on my parents' couch after graduate school. I went to the Department of War in London. I gave all of myself to national security. And then I got a job as an admin assistant. And it was like, I applied, I got crickets. And I bought into that myth that something is better than nothing and that I should just take what I could get. So I was an admin for a while. And then after enough pain, I just realized, like, life is a numbers game. And I emailed my university and I said, do you have a list of alumni who have graduated and moved to Washington, D.C.? And the benefit of that is that anyone in DC probably works in something relating to the government. It's quite narrow, quite two-dimensional there. So I ended up working my way through a list that they sent me of 2,000 names, phone numbers, emails. I called every single person on there. It fell on my face. I said the wrong thing. And then eventually I learned how to talk to people, got multiple job offers, tripled my salary, moved to DC, and was working as a defense contractor for the Pentagon. So that is how I landed into that life.
Wow. Great lessons there. I'd love to parse that. So you did a career transition yourself from that to what you're doing now, correct? Or was there an intermediate step?
Well, I really believe that when you follow what feels right, even if it's not your forever, there's something within your purpose in your work, either right in front of you or on the periphery of that. So while I was following national security, some part of me, especially in grad school, felt like maybe this isn't my forever, but some part of me felt like I was supposed to be on this path. There is something for me to learn. There is something I wanted to experience. And on the periphery of that, I learned how to be an excellent job seeker during the recession in 2008, 2009. So many friends who were way better students than me were unemployed. And here I was making nearly six figures at 23 in a management position after having been an assistant. So I'd really jumped in my career quickly. In one 6-week job hunt, I made this huge leap. And I started showing friends how to do it. And they would always say to me, you should be a career coach. And I remember not even knowing what that was. Like, all I knew was like a sports coach, like a hockey coach or something, somebody who
has a whistle around their neck and
like what even was. Yeah, exactly. And I Googled career coaches and I saw way too many purple websites with rainbows and waterfalls. I remember thinking like, this isn't me. But lo and behold, I eventually quit my job and started helping people just with what I knew, which was job hunting, how to get a job. That turned into online programs. That turned into thousands of customers. That turned into a private practice where I was helping with clarity. People would come back and say, I've got so many job offers, but I don't even know what ones I really want. So then I started helping people reflect after being exposed to enough people in the workforce. And here I am 10 years later with a podcast and a book and all that jazz.
And you're on the show and you're the perfect person I want to talk to. People are quitting jobs, the Great Resignation. I think I read 4.5 million people as of November, this is SHRM, will resign their jobs. And that was up from 4.2 in October. Now, this is, we're just starting 2022 here. A lot of that I understand because COVID hit and service jobs, there's some drudgery there. I get that. Plus, a lot of businesses went under or shuttered for a while or changed their business model. So that I get. What are you seeing? I mean, you you're in this career development and the whole nine yards. Some of the reasons I'm seeing outside of what I just said is, people are reevaluating their culture, unethical behavior, things like that. There may be some job insecurity or reorganization. Reorgs are a pain in my eye. So I understand reorganizations, and a lot of companies, I'm sure, are reorganizing or changing business models I mentioned. So is there a macro, micro here? Tell me what you're seeing.
Well, LinkedIn recently released a 2021 workforce report, and they were showing that November was the strongest hiring month we've had in U.S. history since 2015. And the data was showing that there's really no end in sight to the Great Resignation. And nearly half of the respondents surveyed, they left their jobs this year. So many people will be looking to kind of refresh.
2022.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's so many different things that people can do. But what I have found, according to the data, is that the majority of people who are actively feeling impacted by the Great Resignation, first of all, we're seeing the rates of joblessness is longer than usual. So even though people are resigning, we're also seeing them having a hard time finding a new job. We're also seeing that in the workforce, the people who are higher wage earners are not as impacted by the Great Resignation, meaning that their income, their career stability is very largely the same. They're not quitting. They're not really where the numbers are. What they are suffering from is having to hire people who are lower wage earners. That's where the Great Resignation is taking place the most, especially amongst service staff, essential workers who are risking their life for their job and for lower wages. And there's a whole percentage of them who, especially in the hospitality space, were making more money off of unemployment and the COVID benefits than they were the job itself. So why would you go to work and risk your life when you can make more not? And we are seeing the effects of that. And, also job applications, we have applicant tracking software, which 98% of the Fortune 500 uses. And what's interesting about that is that there's so many different ways to be seen through that software. Like, who knew that if you have a PDF resume, it's not going to go through the applicant tracking software? You have to have a Word doc resume to make it through. The thing to know is that a lot of companies are removing the location of the job and they're offering remote work, which means that instead of just, competing against all the people in your city for the job, you're competing now against the entire world. And as a result, employers are completely overwhelmed. I'm seeing that top performers have an abundance of options right now. There's a big difference between hiring and recruiting. Hiring is looking for talent. Recruiting is actively going out and grabbing the talent you want, not just looking for who's looking, but looking for who you want. And so I'm seeing an unusual amount of clients get job offers and get pitched in their LinkedIn inboxes. And I hate to say this because it's brutal, but the truth of the matter is, if your company has X amount of people and they're laying off Y amount of people, there are conversations saying who's performing, who's necessary. And recruiters tend to understand, that if you were laid off, it's because someone did not deem you absolutely necessary. And we understand that, and it doesn't mean that you need to have a story about your confidence or your worthiness. A lot of the times we're just not in the right job and it's that neutral, people make it mean something about themselves. But people who have stayed at companies that have had wide rolling layoffs, recruiters know that that's top talent. They understand that. So if they are poaching people, they are looking at who made the cut, who's high up, who's climbing in the ranks during the pandemic. And I am seeing them pay top dollar for that talent. I had a client who doubled his salary and he was making six figures, and he doubled just with one DM on LinkedIn from a recruiter was the beginning of the end, and him leaving his employer. So we're seeing a lot of change.
So is it a good time to be an employee, depending, I guess, on the industry? Or
I think it's a good time to be honest about what you really want, because, the workforce is kind of up for grabs in a lot of ways.
Okay.
First of all, you can ask to be remote. I wouldn't wait if you're in an employer right now that they haven't clarified it. I would get ahead on these sorts of conversations of, do you want to be hybrid? Do you want to be remote? Are you moving different states? Because what's going to happen and what is happening is that employers are committing to something that allows employees to move, and then they can't go back on their word if they want to keep that talent. That's the new agreement, even if the company shifts later. So having the important conversations right now is key. I also think if you're a top performer, what a time to be alive, because companies are looking for top talent right now. In times of distress economically, we see extreme innovation. And with innovation, we see growth. That's life. It's just a cycle of life, death, life, And there is like a death that I'm seeing of different mindsets, different ways of being in the corporate world. And it's being followed by a lot of life, a lot of innovation. And these cutting edge companies, especially ones at the intersection of medicine and technology or well-being and technology, they're needing top talent. And it's the best time it could possibly be to have a skill set that caters to digital marketing skills, online skills, healthcare, all of those fields that are on the rise, artificial intelligence, technology capabilities. The list goes on, but I think it really much, depends on what your niche is, what your specialty is, as to answer the question of, is it a good time to be in the workforce?
Yeah, I think COVID, as bad as it is a classic example of Chinese kanji for crisis, the word crisis, which is weijie, which one of the kanji symbols represents opportunity. So there's, in these crazy times, there's opportunity there. It sounds, and it sounds like that's what's opened up. So let me just quite jump in, because you've alluded to this here and there as I was listening to you, and I was reading a lot of your work. If I want to make a career change, or somebody wants to make a career change that's listening out there, is the beginning of the process, what do I really want, or what's meaningful to me? So some of that, at least in the past, seemed like a luxury, right? Can I get work that pays me and is meaningful? Is it putting too much on work to try to make it meaningful?
It's called work for a reason, So I think the expectation that you should love what you do all the time is not reasonable. I think if you like what you do and it's using your core skill set, at least 70 to 80% of the time, you're doing great.
Is that what someone should look at? Some percent of the job that I need to like or fits my skill set?
Yeah. I would say what would be responsible to ask yourself in the question of should I stay or should I go is, am I actively growing a core skill set that I want to harness and carry with me throughout my career? And if the answer is yes, there's really two types of issues in the workplace. There's a what issue, meaning what skill are you using? Are you using the wrong core skill set throughout the day? Maybe you're good with words and they have you doing a lot of coordination. For example, I'm really good with words and writing, and my first job as an admin assistant couldn't have been a worse fit for me. They had me doing a lot of coordinating and details and project managing, and that's just not where my skills are. So that's a what issue, which a lot of people will have, and it feels like you're pushing a river. You're trying to be someone you're not all day. So 70, 80% of the day, if you are growing a core skill set or enjoying the skills you're using, you're doing amazing. The other issue is a how issue. Given that we know that 50% of people leave their jobs because they don't like their boss, what we can assume to be true here is that how your job looks matters just as much as what your job is. That means, what are your core values? Let's say you're a words person and you're working in sales, but you value integrity and you're selling something you don't believe in. That's a violation of your core values. And that's a how issue. So there's a lot of people who maybe the job is great, but there's a problem with the manager or people that they work with. And that's just a how issue. It's violating their core values in some way. The people around them aren't healthy for them.
Tell me a little more about values, just for clarity here. I mean, obviously ethics is rolled into that, but what do you mean by values? It sounds like you're saying clarify your values before you go to the next work and make sure it fits.
Your core values to me as a career expert are the non-negotiable principles by which you live your life. And the mistake that people make when they're coming up with their values is that they're too aspirational in their values, meaning they pick the word peace, but they're not the most peaceful person. It's like, oh, that's a would like to have, not a core value. If it was a core value, you'd be embodying it now. So I think what's important is asking yourself, what words represent principles by which I live my life? And I have a really big list in my book, U-Turn. I'm sure you could probably find it on my website too. But there are words like family, authenticity, spirituality, connection, inspiration, creativity. The list goes on. And really being able to say, what are the 5 words that really are a reflection of me in my day-to-day life? And it can help to have conversations with people that know you well as you're kind of parsing through that list. But really being able to see your skill, the what of your career, as how you're spending your day, how you're harnessing your energy, your mind, your body, your heart throughout the day, what your responsibilities and tasks are. Whereas the how, the core values, is really a filter for your yeses and your nos. Meaning, if you value health, you have to define what that means to you. That means, if that means going to the gym every single day, having balance or something like that, you're going to have to use that as a filter for what questions you ask in the hiring process to ensure that your core values are going to be respected, honored, and intact. Because if you don't, it's not going to be a sustainable path.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I know you have an assessment I want to talk about because I took your assessment on your website, but is there equivalent of that assessment for values out there that you recommend or no?
I have yet to find. I've heard from so many people who've read my book, and notoriously, people are just not great at identifying their own core values. I think it requires a conversation. I mean, in a world where robots are taking over, I have yet to find a robot to be able to take over this sort of determination. And so that's something that I explore really in depth with people and with myself on an ongoing basis.
So read up on it, look up a list, and then ponder it, maybe talk to your friends or spouse or whatever, and
define the words.
What's important. Yeah. And whatever resonates with you. How critical is that, Ashley? From a practical, I'm going to change careers, I'm going to do something. It resonates with me, but I didn't even think like this before. But it resonates with me just at where I am at right now, just because I'm trying to prioritize happiness, enjoyment, things like that. Those were not factors for work for me in the past. It's more important to me now, but it still seems like a luxury.
I hear what you're saying. I think that it's time that everyone takes a stand for the and. We can get work that pays our bills and we're stimulated. And I think there's a misunderstanding around enjoying.
Oh, that's good. That's
work.
good. Stimulation. Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, I get that.
And I think it's really important that you ask yourself, how do you want to see work? I mean, we spend 90,000 hours of our life at work. That's 2/3 of our time awake on this planet. So I understand that people want it to count, but your purpose moves. Like the new mother who just had a baby, her purpose is to mother her baby. It's not in her career right now. And I think that this whole idea of find my purpose, find my passion has really diminished the importance of work being a place you go to grow, a place you go to contribute, to sharpen your mind, to be a part of the whole. And so to me, the question of what's my purpose isn't as inspiring as where am I gifted? What are your natural skills? What can you up the volume on and bring to the table and contribute to the world? Because when you are working in your zone of genius, you're making way more of an impact. Like you are never going to get from me the magic as an admin assistant doing project management work that you are going to get if you have me write a book. I'm going to make an impact on the world when I put the pen to the paper, not when I'm running logistics and dropping the ball. So it's important to know, it's like what is that expression about trying to teach a fish to fly or a bird to be a fish? It's like, we make so much meaning of ourselves when we are not in the right path. And I think the important thing that everyone should be asking themselves is not, where is my purpose? Where is my passion? Your passion is good to know. It's a great backdrop. But, I'm passionate about 5-star travel resorts and massages, but I'm not going to go be a masseuse or run a hotel. So I think what you're passionate about is very much so a backdrop for what you're going to bring your skills to. Yeah. So still the bigger question is, where am I gifted? Where do people give me feedback? Where have people seen me at my best? Maybe you need to ask your colleagues, your friends, your family, where have you seen me at my best? Or where have you seen me at my best professionally? It's so important to be able to look at that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times passion also comes after the fact. If you invest yourself in something, a passion can develop from that. You don't know. So I think a lot of people get the cart before the horse.
Yeah, of course. And being a good consumer of something, like I love consuming film and politics, does not equate to being a good producer. I'll watch films all day, but I'm not going to be a film director or anything like that. And I think that's the disconnect most people have. And also too high of expectations. I'm not here to tell people to lower their bar. I'm telling people to really step into an honest look at the word work. It's called work for a reason. Everything has a cost of admission. I love my business. I love what I do. I loved writing my book. I love running my podcast. And I don't like the tech glitches. And I don't like the editing process for books. There's so many things that I'm like, oh, hate this part, but love the whole. and I'm being who I am. So that's why my work is really built on the idea of don't do what you love, do what you are. And if you don't know who you are or where your gifts are, that's the first order of business, not getting a new job or, figuring out what job to look for. It's who are you? Where are your skills? And then really exploring what's out there that aligns with these skills.
I love the phrase, hate some parts, but love the whole.
I never said that before. That was just today's thought.
Today's thought with Ashley. That's great. Okay. So we're going to do a little reflection. What are my gifts? What am I good at? I'm not going to put the burden of the meaning of my life onto work. It's nice to have work that's meaningful, but I think also from a standpoint of meaning, the same thing with purpose is that's something you create wherever you are, right? You create meaning and you create your purpose versus necessarily, it's not always you necessarily discovered or it hits you over the head. Sometimes that happens. That's my view anyway. So, and we start with our values, start with our gifts and what we're good at. And then, we're out there looking is part of getting clear on what you want to do with your career, pretty much this process of value identification, skill identification, so on and so forth. Is there then some kind of reflection on a vertical or?
Yeah, well, you're touching on a lot of good points. I think the most important thing to look at in your career is your mindset, because your job, your career, your business, if you're a business owner, a lot of times just a reflection of your worthiness and your confidence. And so even anyone listening right now, if you just write down on a piece of paper, I'm not where I want to be because, and fill in the blank. Like usually it's a limitation, it's a story you're telling yourself, and it's not even really true. A lot of people say, I'm not where I want to be because I don't have enough experience. But yet again, there is someone out there doing what you want to do with the same experience as you. So it's really a mindset thing. My mindset in your career is that you should be experimental. And the problem that I think I see the past 10 years as a career expert is that too many people are not willing to allow themselves the dignity of being experimental. They hold their career too heavily. It's equated to almost, your mom when you go to preschool telling you the first person you have a crush on, you have to marry them. That's like what we're doing in our career. It's like the first job we get, we need to grow it. And it's like,
gosh, that's so hard. Yeah.
Yeah. See yourself entering a portal in your career. And unless you're in your late 70s, early 80s, you've got time to give to your career and you have every reason to keep going. And even if you're older, you've got every reason to keep going. But I think it never ceases to amaze me how many people will stay stuck where they are only because of the time they put in to get there. And they're miserable and they won't accept that, maybe you went to medical school for 5 years and paid off all that debt and you don't want to be a doctor anymore. But don't forget that your skills from the past, there's always a way to carry them into a thread towards your future. And it's your job to be able to communicate about those and to extract from your experiences and make sense of them in a way that takes you where you want to go, using the skills you want to go, honoring the values that you have. My book has an 11-step roadmap to self-discovery as it relates to your career. But these are some of the core facets. And I would say once you've really looked at your values, your skills, and you're allowing yourself to be experimental, I think part of that is realizing clarity comes from engagement. It doesn't come from thought. You can't think yourself there. And so I would say having conversations, whenever my business feels really flat, I just tell myself like, oh, wow, it's time to have some conversations. And it doesn't mean I need to be on all the time, but I am available. That means that at the grocery store, I'm not on my phone. I'm present. I'm standing in line. I'm talking to people. You never know where your conversations will take you. But if you get curious and you make a game out of it and say, I'm stuck, so today I'm going to have a conversation and I don't know where it's going to happen, and you gamify your life in that way. I live in New York City, so there's plenty of conversations to be had left, right, and center. But it's amazing to me the amount of opportunities I've created in a random bathroom line, like at Starbucks. So, you don't have to be someone you're not. But you do just have to be living your life with receptivity and an experimental light mindset.
I love that. I do that too. I talk to strangers all the time. I just wrote down gamify your life. I like that.
Yeah.
You're throwing out some nuggets. You got some nuggets.
I don't know where this is coming from.
You're channeling. Now, everything you're saying also, because we're talking to people that either they've quit their job, or they're about to, or they're going to make a career change. But we're also talking about people that maybe this applies to people who want to start a business. Or are you in a disco right now? Because you've got
No, my
lights.
computer keeps having little pop-ups.
It's actually cool. It's actually kind of
really
cool. You've got your purple, then your blue, then your,
Wow. To be honest, I'm mentally at a disco all the time. So I'm so glad you're creating the truth of me right now.
This jive talk. So this applies to people starting a business too, right?
Yeah.
Or trying to, because I have the problem. I have a million ideas and I can never settle, and I get bored easily. A lot of times I'll talk to people and they'll go, well, what's next for you here or there? And I'm like, I don't really know. I have this idea. But I feel sometimes like it's a disadvantage. Like, man, I wish there was just one thing calling me that I could just throw my efforts, but because it seems like my efforts are diffused.
Right.
So is that?
I think shiny object syndrome is so common, especially amongst entrepreneurs. But that's why I don't really, at any given moment, we've got the majority of the workforce job hunting. And I don't really think they're job hunting. I think they're clarity hunting. I think they're just looking for the next thing and hoping it scratches the itch that was missing in the last one. And so I think anyone right now who is feeling that sense of confusion, the first order of business is to come home to yourself. That's why I wrote my book. That's why my work is out there, is because I've been lost before. I've found
How did you find yourself? You've been lost. How do you?
There are certain things that everyone has, and it's just a game of paying attention that make them them. So for example, when I see, there's a couple of friends I have where whenever I see them, I feel like me again. I have a lot of great friends, but there's a few of them that in particular, when I see them, I come home and I'm me. I love hip hop music. I love dance classes. I love poetry. I love writing. These are the things. I love piano music. These are the things that bring me back to me. And so I think a lot of people are looking for career clarity in their career, but where they need to look is with themselves. They need to just come back into a joyful state, because when you feel yourself, it's easier to feel into what feels like a yes and what feels like a no. And what I mean by that is not about following your passion or feeling good. It's quite scientific. I mean, your gut has 200 million neurons, which is the size of a cat or dog's brain. So what we know to be true here is that, there is an intelligence to when your stomach sinks, when you have butterflies in your stomach. There's a wisdom to that. And I think all of us tend to be missing that connection to that sinking feeling in our stomach. The amount of people who've come to me and said, oh, I've got this awesome job offer. I'm so excited about it. And I say, okay, great. So why are you excited about it? They tell me. And then I say, okay, well, how do you feel about the day-to-day? What are the responsibilities? And I start to go through their day-to-day, and the actual experience of the job, they're not excited about it at all. And it's like, okay, then why would you put yourself through that?
They're flattered. I think they're flattered by someone's.
Or it's just survival. I think a lot of the times it's like, this is going to pay my bills and that's it, And I feel for everyone who's in that position. I've been there. I've been broke. I've had wealth. I've been broke again. I've had wealth again. I find that the hack to success is being who you are. And I used to cringe when people would say that, be yourself. I'd be like, no, there's no room in the workforce for that. But there is, because the people, if you look right now at the people you admire most, they're being them in their work. The people who really shine, especially in the media, they're different. They're doing something different. They're following that wise voice inside of them. They're following those feelings in their stomach that says yes or says no. And they're following the nudges. And that's the thing, is that in life, sometimes we forget to notice what's wanting to happen. And what I mean by that is, when I started my coaching business, there were so many people I remember, way back when they'd say, are you doing any groups, coaching groups? And I'd say, no. And then the next week, are you doing any groups, coaching groups? No. And then finally, like the fifth person that asked me, I'm like, wow, this must be wanting to happen. Like so many people are asking me about starting a coaching group. And so through that, I have really learned the importance of just allowing myself to pay attention to the feedback that I'm getting from people, the requests that I'm getting from people, and to trust the wisdom in life being a mirror, that people see you and people ask questions through the lens of their perception of you. So if people are seeing that you are someone who, is very insightful, they're going to be asking if you're providing something that harnesses your insights. It's just the natural flow of the way things work. So I think paying attention to what people want from you, where people compliment you, where you're, inspired, where you're tired is all incredibly valuable.
Okay. So, and this is advice I could package up for if I don't really know what I want to do, finding myself or identifying what turns me on or what have you. Okay, cool. I want to go back to this assessment thing. So yes. I'm not a big believer in personality tests, but I think there are some evidence-based kind of profiling systems out there. I did take one. I think the guy's name was Stephen Weiss, called Who Am I? That was an interesting. It was value. I think it was values based. But I took your assessment. So you have assessment on your website, because I was like, well, let me go through this. What's the algorithm behind it, or is it just your collective database of matching?
I put a lot of research into just kind of I agree with you. It's really hard to dwindle somebody down into a box. I will say that I see personality test as more of a weather forecast, like
directional.
It's a general, like, put your finger in the air, feel the wind. Like, okay, you tend to go this route and you have all the free will in the world to not. I also think a lot of the times that personality tests won't work if people are operating out of a wound. They're answering questions out of wanting to be worthy, wanting to be. A lot of people want to
leave a job, right?
Yeah. People are where they're at in their life. They're frustrated that day. They don't like something in their work. It exaggerates the direction that they're taking their responses. So I do think there's a lot of factors. But I created my quiz on my website called What Career Personality Are You? As a way to help people with the what, with their skill set. And in my book, I have 10 core skill sets that I think really do generally exist in the workforce. Again, it's a weather forecast. There's going to be more skills in the world than 10. But generally, people fall under these 10 that I have in my book. And in my quiz, I narrowed down to 4 general directions that people harness their energy. I'm guessing that you got the communicator, but I'm curious what your result was.
Don't know what mindset I was in when I took this, but it says entrepreneur.
Oh, right. Well, you're an entrepreneur. Yeah. I literally forgot about my own quiz result.
It leads with the entrepreneur. And then the entrepreneur is, I'm just reading the results you gave me. It was pretty cool, by the way. I mean,
thank you.
I took the test and I got the email back. You didn't just throw out data. This is who you are. I got a series of emails.
Yeah.
It's a self-starter that has entrepreneur qualities, but prefers the structure of the workforce, working for a company versus owning their own. I mean, these are just, I think, high level, whether you're an entrepreneur, out on your own, or an entrepreneur, one thing for sure. So here's what stood out for me. One thing for sure, if you're not growing, you feel like you're dying. Now, that really resonates with me, because I will feel like I'm dying, and I like a lot of leeway. You know what I mean? I don't look over my shoulder, blah, 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 blah. I like to collaborate, but I'm very independent. But if you're not growing, you feel like dying. Part of me thinks everybody would feel that way.
No?
Okay.
No, there are genuinely people out there that they are, and I talk about this in my book as well, as core motivators. Ease is a motivator. Some people are motivated by simplicity. And what that looks like is repetition. So, some people, it depends on what their goals are in their life. Some of them might live how they live, and they want simplicity. They don't want to be stimulated because maybe they have other things in their life that are stimulating them, and they don't want it to be their work. So I think everybody's different. Okay. There's a lid for every pot. And, that's why you got that test result, I'm sure, the entrepreneur, because you are someone who is very entrepreneurial. And a lot of that has to do with growth. I can't imagine being an entrepreneur that doesn't want to grow. That doesn't sound like a success plan.
Well, and personally, I'm always hopefully on a track I want to grow as a person and learn, discover. I have a very high curiosity index, right? I'm just very curious. It says here, you're a visionary who sees the big picture, inspires others to work. So the big picture thing is big for me. Like I will do the details. I want to paint the big picture. I'm going to plant the flag, that kind of thing. But I'm interested in details. I want to know what's going on, right? I thought it was good because, like I said, it wasn't just this template that spit out, but then I got a series of emails exploring more in depth as to that. But you said there's another one called Communicator. Was there another one there? Because that sounds like me too.
Yeah, that is. So here's the thing. I mean, most people tend to resonate with a few core skill sets out of the 10 that I have in my book. There's a primary skill set and a secondary skill set. And again, we can't narrow somebody down to one box. it's very directional and, just there to support people with kind of taking their mind in the right direction. But yeah, that's probably your secondary skill set that I would guess is communication.
Yeah. It also says here, I'm very good looking, very super tall.
Well, when I went into ActiveCampaign, my email software, I'm like, oh, he's taking the quiz. Gotta edit this particular email for him.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Damn it. So yeah, and when I look at some of you actually give career path options here.
Yeah.
Again, these are, I'm assuming, suggestions. A lot of this stuff I've already done or am doing in my life.
Exactly.
So it's interesting. But again, I was thinking, God, is this like, astrology, or is this, am I really, kind of, but
is
no,
actually reading my diary.
Yeah. No. So this is, this is very helpful. So I encourage everybody. Now, do you believe in recruiters? So if I'm in a job situation, are recruiters important? A lot of people recommend just networking. Do you go on LinkedIn and just search jobs? What are some of the practical, I know we don't have that much time left, but what are some of the practical ways of job hunting? Or
I have a course on this called the Job Offer Academy. And what we basically teach is if somebody has clarity, and if they don't, we have a course for that too, obviously, but they end up using
wait. You have a course on clarity.
Yeah. For your career clarity. It's called the Career Clarity Lab at careerclaritylab.com.
Okay.
And the goal of that course is to answer the question of what career path is best for me and what job titles make sense for me. And where the rubber kind of hits the road in that course is once you've done enough reflection, we give you an exercise on LinkedIn that helps you use the advanced search in a way that generates profiles that make sense for you. And so I would say, if you want to work somewhere, like one company is really interesting for you and they have certain type of position that aligns with your core skill set, look at who is in that role at that company and what other companies they've been at. It's very much like Amazon recommending a book because you bought a different one. It's like, where else has this person been? Where did they leave that company for? And you start building out a company list. I think from there, figuring out who hiring managers are on your ideal team is really key. And being able to send cold emails, letting them know you're really interested in being considered and attaching a copy of your resume.
Sorry, you're looking at companies or personal profiles?
The advanced search on LinkedIn gives you so many options. And I digress because I think to myself, like it's like a 15-minute tutorial I'm trying to figure out. And I show people my computer screen. And that's in the Career Clarity Lab and the Job Offer Academy course. So you can get that tutorial in either one. But the idea is to go into the advanced search and look at what your options are and use it with the intention of finding someone doing something you're interested in and then educating yourself on the scope of their work beyond what they're doing today.
So it's a person. It's a person with a specific role. Oh, okay. And then see where they have worked in the type of companies. Okay. So let's say you want to be a chef. So you're looking for somebody in that particular role. Is that right? Am I oversimplifying? Okay, cool.
No, that's totally it.
So would you recommend, if somebody can afford it and they want to quit in the environment we are in now, that they can go ahead and do it if they have that reserve to then reflect and do the job search, or should they hang on?
I think they should hang on unless they're miserable and it's killing them inside, because the joblessness is very long right now. And it's very real that if you don't have a job, employers aren't as rushed or they don't feel the same urgency as when you do have a job. It's just like dating. If somebody feels like you've got options, they want to lock it down way quicker. If someone feels like you're just hanging out, they take their time. And it's the same thing in the workforce. I see it on and on again. And there's probably a whole psychological phenomenon to that.
That's so funny. I had a recruiter reach out to me and I took the call just because I was flattered they reached out, right? And it was a pretty high level gig, and but I wasn't going to take it, but I just wanted to talk, and I wanted them to offer, even though I wasn't going to take it. I wanted them to offer it to me. It's horrible, right? It's just ego. It's like, look, I'm not interested, but I want everybody to love me. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a part of you that was open to it, or else you really wouldn't have taken it at all.
You should be a therapist. So
I have a master's in psychology and chose.
Oh, do you? Well, that explains that. So tell me, it's ashleystahl.com. Is that right?
Yep.
Give me the resources. And you've got a book. I saw that. By the way, Nir
Eyal.
He was on the podcast.
Love him.
Funny. Yeah, he's great. It was last year, probably a couple of years ago or more, longer. And then he used my audio. I guess he spun up a podcast. He used my audio guy. I found out later. And then I saw that he interviewed you. Yeah, he's a great guy. And he's got a great newsletter. So ashleystahl.com, and then all your resources there. Do you consult with individuals? Do you do one-on-one? So you mentioned a group thing. I don't know if you do that.
Yeah. I haven't done groups in a while, but companies have been bringing me on to help their employees figure out who they are and what career path within the company is best for them, with the intention of retaining their employees versus having their team look elsewhere. And then I've been doing a lot of keynotes around the world. Even during COVID, I'm traveling and speaking, weirdly enough.
And you never got it.
And I've never got it. I mean, I definitely keep my distance. But I would say, I do consulting. It just depends on the situation. I have a private practice. I take on a small amount of clients every month because I find it really inspiring. But it's not the main focus of my time. And my book you'd mentioned, it's called U-Turn, Y-O-U. And it's Get Unstuck, Discover Your Direction, Design Your Dream Career. And it's bright yellow. You can't miss it anywhere books are sold.
And I'm going to link to it here in the show notes. Ashley, this has been great. And we came in on time. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed it, do share it with your friends and on your social platforms. Big thanks to Sam Williams, my audio guy. And the beautiful bumper music you're hearing is Michael Petrovich's Bella Luna. For all my show notes or resource links, visit LarryWeeks.com, and we will talk again soon.